You waited all summer for these tomatoes, and this morning the first big one is finally ripe. You reach down, pick it, turn it over in your hand, and your heart just sinks. That black, sunken, leathery patch spread right across the bottom. After months of watering and feeding, why do your tomatoes keep rotting on the bottom like this? Nearly everyone will tell you the same thing. Your soil is short on calcium, so you crush up eggshells, you drop in antacid tablets, and the rot comes right back anyway. But your soil almost certainly has plenty of calcium already. The real reason is something else entirely, and the fix costs you nothing but a jar from your kitchen and one small change to how you water. That black patch on the bottom of the fruit has a name. Gardeners call it blossom end rot because it forms at the blossom end, the spot opposite the stem where the flower once was. And the standard explanation you will find in almost every comment section is that the plant is starving for calcium. Calcium builds the walls of each tiny cell in the fruit. When those walls fail to form at the bottom of a fast-growing tomato, the tissue there collapses, dries out, and turns into that sunken, leathery patch. So far, that part is true. The trouble starts with what people tell you to do about it. Crush up a bowl of eggshells and dig them into the soil around the plant. Drop a couple of antacid tablets into the planting hole. Mix up a calcium spray and mist the leaves every few days. It feels productive. You are giving the plant the exact thing the internet said it was missing. And then the next tomato ripens with the same black bottom, and the one after that, and you start to wonder what you are doing wrong. The honest answer is that those fixes mostly fail, and there are good reasons why. Part of what makes the calcium story so sticky is that it sounds right, because calcium really is involved. It is just not missing from your soil. North Carolina State Extension has looked hard at the eggshell trick, and the problem is speed. A crushed eggshell is almost pure calcium carbonate, but it breaks down in the soil painfully slowly, over months and even years, far too slow to rescue a plant that is fruiting right now. The calcium is in there. Your plant just cannot get at it this season. Antacid tablets tossed in the soil do very little for the same reason. And the calcium spray is the one that surprises people most. Clemson Extension points out that the fruit skin barely takes up calcium, so misting the plant looks like action while changing almost nothing inside the tomato where it counts. The spray mostly just wets the leaves. Not exactly the cure you were promised. If the fixes fail, maybe the soil was never really short on calcium to begin with. For most gardens, it was not. Iowa State Extension is blunt about this. The great majority of garden soils already hold plenty of calcium for a tomato plant. Unless you are growing in very sandy ground or soil that has turned quite acidic over the years, the calcium your plant needs is already down there in the dirt around the roots. Think about what that means for a second. You have been trying to solve a shortage that does not exist. You have been adding a mineral to soil that already holds more than enough of it. No wonder the eggshells and the tablets and the sprays never seem to move the needle. They were aimed at a problem your garden did not have. But the calcium story you have been told is only half the picture. The calcium was there all along. Something was stopping it from finishing the trip to the fruit, and it comes down to how the plant moves water. Calcium cannot travel around a tomato plant on its own. It does not drift from leaf to leaf or float down into the fruit wherever it happens to be needed. Calcium moves in one direction only, carried along in the stream of water that the plant pulls up out of the ground. The roots drink, the water rises through the stems, it spreads out into the leaves and the fruit, and the calcium rides along for the trip like cargo in that current. Iowa State Extension describes calcium as a nutrient that moves with water flow through the plant, and that single fact explains everything. Picture the plant like a house with old plumbing. The calcium is the water supply, and it can only reach a faucet if the water is actually running to it. Now think about where a tomato sits. The blossom end, that bottom tip, is the farthest point from the stem, the very last stop on the line. It is the upstairs bathroom at the end of the hall. When water flows steadily through the plant, calcium reaches even that far corner, and the cell walls build correctly. When the water flow stutters, the far end is the first place to run dry. And water flow stutters all the time in a real garden. A stretch of hot, dry days comes through, and the plant loses water from its leaves faster than the roots can pull it up. You forget to water for a few days, then soak the bed to make up for it, and the plant swings from drought to flood. A burst of heat pushes the plant to grow fast, and the young fruit swells quickly, demanding calcium sooner than the interrupted water stream can deliver it. In every one of those moments, the plant protects its leaves first, and the blossom end of the fruit gets skipped. The cells there never receive their calcium, they fail to form properly, and days later you see the black patch. The very same hot dry spell that pushes your plant to grow is what quietly starves the bottom of the fruit. By the time you spot the damage, the mistake already happened weeks earlier, during a dry stretch you probably do not even remember. This is also why tomatoes grown in pots and containers get hit the hardest of all. A pot holds only a small pocket of soil, and on a scorching afternoon it can dry out almost completely by midday, then get soaked again in the evening. That fast swing from bone dry to sopping wet is exactly the stutter the fruit cannot survive. If your worst rot always shows up on the container plants, that is the reason. A pot dries out much faster than a garden bed, so it needs watering more often and a layer of mulch on top to hold that moisture steady. So the calcium was in the soil the whole time. The plant simply could not carry it out to the fruit fast enough during an uneven, thirsty stretch of summer. That is blossom end rot. Not a shortage in the ground, but a delivery problem in the plant. Every product you were sold was aimed at the wrong target. The calcium was never the thing you were missing, which means you cannot buy your way out of this one. The fix is a change in habit, and it costs you nothing. Start with the one small change I promised you, because this is the part that actually stops the rot. Water deeply and evenly, on a rhythm the plant can count on. A deep, even soak does far more good than a light daily sprinkle that only wets the top inch of soil. Give the bed a long, slow drink that drives water down deep into the root zone, then let the surface dry out a little before the next one. For most tomato beds in summer, that works out to a thorough watering every 2 or 3 days rather than a splash every evening, though your exact timing depends on your heat and your soil. The goal is simple. Never let the plant swing between bone dry and soaking wet. Steady water is what carries the calcium. You can check the depth with your finger. After you water, push a finger down into the soil near the plant. If it comes up dry just an inch down, you barely wet the surface and the roots got almost nothing. You want that water reaching several inches down, where the working roots actually live. A slow trickle from a hose laid at the base beats a quick blast from a watering can every time, because the slow soak has time to sink in instead of running off the top and away. It helps to picture a good week. A long, deep soak that leaves the whole root zone thoroughly wet. Then 2 or 3 days where the surface dries out, but the depth stays damp under the mulch. Then another deep soak before the plant ever reaches real stress. That is the calm, even rhythm the fruit can build on, with none of the wild swings from parched to flooded that cause the trouble. Now protect that steadiness with mulch, because this is where you buy yourself a margin for error. Lay down a couple of inches of mulch over the soil around your plants. Straw, shredded leaves, dried grass clippings, wood chips, whatever you have on hand for free. That blanket slows evaporation, keeps the soil underneath cool and evenly damp, and softens the moisture swings that trigger the rot in the first place. Yukon Extension points to good watering and mulch management as the real key to preventing blossom end rot, and it is the cheapest insurance in the garden. If you forget a watering during a hot week, that mulch layer covers for you. If untangling the expensive garden myths from the fixes that cost nothing sounds useful to you, consider following along, because that is the whole reason this channel exists. One more habit helps more than you would think. Water in the morning when you can. Overnight the soil stays cooler and holds moisture longer, so the plant starts its hot day already full, instead of playing catch-up through the afternoon. It is the same steady supply, just timed so the plant is never caught thirsty when the sun is at its worst. And go easy on the high nitrogen fertilizer. When you push a tomato with a lot of nitrogen, it throws itself into fast, lush, leafy growth. Those hungry new leaves pull the water stream toward themselves and outcompete the fruit for calcium, exactly when the fruit can least afford to lose. So ease off the heavy feeding while your plants are setting and swelling fruit. A calmer, steadier plant delivers calcium to its tomatoes far more reliably than a plant racing to grow. And for the fruit already showing the black patch, do not wait and hope. Pick those tomatoes off and toss them. They will not heal, and leaving them on only makes the plant spend energy on fruit you cannot use. Removing them frees the plant to pour its resources into the next round of tomatoes coming up behind them, the ones your new watering rhythm is going to protect. Now about that jar from your kitchen. There is an honest place for it, as long as we are clear about what it does and what it does not do. If you garden in sandy soil or ground that has drifted acidic over the years, your soil genuinely might run low on calcium. The only way to know for sure is a cheap soil test, and a basic pH kit costs a few dollars at any garden store. It is worth the small spend because it turns guessing into knowing. If that test shows your soil really is low or quite acidic, then adding calcium does help, on top of fixing your watering. The recipe is simple, made from what you already have. Save your eggshells. Rinse them and bake them in a low oven for a few minutes until they are dry and brittle, then crush them as fine as you can. Put a small handful of that crushed shell in a jar and pour in enough plain white vinegar to cover it, maybe half a cup. It will fizz. That fizzing is the vinegar dissolving the calcium out of the shell into a form the plant can take up far faster than raw shell ever could. Let it sit for a day or two until the fizzing stops, then strain off the liquid. To use it, dilute it heavily, roughly a tablespoon of that concentrate into a gallon of water, and pour it around the base of the plant as a soil drench, maybe once every couple of weeks. I promised you honesty, so here is the caveat that matters most. This drench only ever supports the plant. It will not reverse an active outbreak on its own, and it works slowly and gently over time. Your watering rhythm is what stops the rot. The jar just helps a genuinely hungry soil catch up. And if a test shows your ground is simply too acidic, the real long-term repair for the soil itself is a little garden lime worked in ahead of the season, which raises the pH and unlocks the calcium already sitting there. That is the full picture, without anyone selling you a miracle in a bottle. Take a breath now, because this is a much smaller problem than it looked like this morning. Blossom end rot is not a disease. It does not spread through your garden, and you cannot catch it from one plant to the next. Old Farmer's Almanac notes that most tomato plants grow right out of it once conditions steady, and that matches what you will see in your own beds. The first flush of fruit on young plants gets hit the hardest, back when the roots are still small and the weather is still swinging. As the plant matures, its roots reach deeper, its water supply grows more stable, and the later fruit comes in clean. You may also notice the rot favors some tomatoes more than others. The long paste types, the Romas and San Marzanos you grow for sauce, tend to get blossom end rot worse than round slicing tomatoes. Their stretched out shape puts the blossom end even farther from the stem, a longer run for the water to make, so they feel a shaky supply sooner. If those are the plants giving you the most grief, they are perfectly normal. Just hold their watering the steadiest of all. That is the part I want you to hold on to. You have not lost the plant. You have not lost the season. You lost a few early tomatoes to a watering rhythm the plant could not count on. And that is a thing you can start fixing today, with a hose and a bale of straw and nothing from the checkout counter. Keep one idea from all of this above the rest. Feed the water, not just the soil. The calcium your tomatoes need is almost always already there in the ground beneath them, waiting. Your job is not to keep buying more of it and burying it around the roots. Your job is to keep the water moving steadily enough to carry what is already there all the way out to the blossom end of every fruit. Water deeply and evenly, lay down a blanket of free mulch, and go a little lighter on the fertilizer. That is the whole fix. There is a real satisfaction waiting for you a few weeks from now, when you walk out on a summer morning, reach into the plant, and lift a heavy red tomato that is smooth and perfect all the way around. You turn it over and the bottom is flawless, no black patch anywhere on it. Just a tomato you grew right, for the price of paying attention to your hose. That is the quiet reward of understanding what your plant was actually asking for, instead of what a bag at the store told you to buy. If growing more food and spending almost nothing is the kind of gardening that makes sense to you, you will feel right at home here. Tell me in the comments what your summer weather has been doing lately, hot and dry or wet and wild, and we will sort out your watering rhythm together.